President Zelensky, thank you so much for joining Bloomberg. Viktor Orban was here yesterday, and Hungary is now at the helm of the European Union with the rotating presidency. He's been a hurdle at times to get aid to Ukraine. And in Kyiv, the first time he's come since the war broke out, he's calling for a ceasefire. What's your response?
Thank you. Thank you for this question. Firstly, the fact that Orban came, so you do hear the interpretation, right? So, firstly, the fact that Orban came here, it is a good signal. It is much better than not having the dialogue. It's important for us because we are neighbors. I tried several times to establish the relationship, to make the relationship between our countries closer, and I think now we've managed to do it. We've had this meeting. I don't know what would be the outcome of it all in the future. It's hard for me to say, but this is a good and warm step towards each other, because the neighbors want to live and talk and keep and supporting each other instead of blocking. And I'm happy that Hungary is now supporting Ukraine on the path towards the EU. Yes, in terms of the ceasefire, as you said, I've explained clearly. We cannot, in this war, we cannot just talk about ceasefire. I want to have the plan, and our people need the plan. We cannot simply trust Putin, like, in principle, we cannot trust him because he is a killer and the aggressor. And it's important that Hungary admits that Russia is the aggressor. It's important that Hungary recognizes Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. So in terms of the ceasefire, I can clearly explain that we've had hundreds of meetings since the Minsk agreements many years ago. We've had agreements about ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia, and Russia has been always breaking all the agreements and has been killing our people. So only if it's on some international forum in the presence of the countries' leaders who are trusted. They might have different ideas, different views on the stages, how this war will be over, but we all have to be on the same side. We have to trust each other. Trust is very important. The Peace Summit, by the way, has shown that we can follow this plan. Over 100 countries were there, and today we're talking about their nuclear security and energy security, and there will be a clear plan. So the ceasefire also needs a clear plan. We must understand that Russia would not be using ceasefire to simply accumulate equipment on the territory, our territory that they've occupied, because we will not be striking them. I mean, they can use that to create a strong fist here and then accuse us of breaking the ceasefire and start another invasion. So it's really complicated for us. It would take a significant loss for us if they invade again, as in the beginning of 2022, when they have almost reached the capital city. And they accumulated a lot of equipment on the territory of Belarus. And Belarus kept saying that, no, it's just the exercise. No occupation is in mind. It's just the training. It's just military games. So it's very important. I really don't want to have this big trouble for my country, because we are at war already. Giving the advantage to Russia now, it's just impossible. We need to be smart. And it's important also who will be responsible for this, besides the Ukrainians who are paying with their lives. Which country will be responsible? It's easy to just talk about ceasefire, but it's very difficult to enforce it, to keep it. It's very difficult to find those who will respond why the ceasefire.
But we're going to see more calls for a ceasefire, especially as the world politically is moving to the right and potentially moving to the right in the United States. You have said this war is dependent on U.S. aid. I want to ask you, did you watch the presidential debate between Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump?
So, first and foremost, the ceasefire is an important element in any plan to finish the war. So a ceasefire is not finishing the war. We've been there. It would be just a frozen conflict. And it would be frozen for the aggressor, because it would be frozen on our territory and our people would be under the occupation. This gives a clear advantage to one side. That's why it's easy to offer different proposals of ceasefires. But what's important? It's important to find answer what would come after. It's the matter of not just the victory. There are many people talking about ceasefire, and it's fine that people are talking, but what would happen next? That is the question. For example, what's the next step? What's the third step? What would be the step when Putin breaks the ceasefire? After the ceasefire, a month after the ceasefire, will he pull out the troops out of Ukraine? Who guarantees that he will pull the troops out of the occupied territories? And there's silence. Nobody has answer. I'm not accusing. I just want to explain that we are at war and we understand this. So, the debates.
Well, I saw because the answer of how this might all unravel will depend on also who's at the table from the United States.
Amongst other things, it might depend on who is the president of the U.S. Yes, that's a fact. Because the U.S., the United States of America, today are probably the most powerful player. So the matter whether the United States would be the major international player, whether they want that, or they want to focus more on their internal politics. I cannot say, it doesn't depend on me.
So did you watch the debate?
Yes, I watched the debates. So first and foremost, I want to say, I don't know, maybe it would be out of tune to what we see in the US media, but I watched, and we are not electing the president of the US, so I didn't look at the incumbent president and the former president. I looked at them in terms of Ukraine. And may the US public apologize, forgive me, but they are electing the president, but I was watching from the point of view whether both of them can
so
help
much
trade.
time with President Biden, more than most other world leaders. Have you seen a deterioration in his health?
The deterioration, it's difficult for me to say about the health, Biden health. It's difficult for me to say. It would not be really ethical from my side. Biden did a lot for Ukraine. Really, a lot. So I think it's important that the person acts. Biden did many steps to strengthen Ukraine. And I can be frank, we wanted to have more from him. That's true. But there are different processes, there are different issues. That's not only specific to the US. The European leaders, too, we wanted the world to be more decisive and to put Putin in place. We all wanted that. I'm sure that one person cannot break the general rules, cannot reshuffle lands in the world and territories. So the world has no right to enable one person, Putin, to break all rules. So I think both President Biden and European leaders, they have to be more decisive. This is what I think. And in terms of Trump, I watched the debate. I wanted to hear their opinion about the war and the end of the war, and I didn't hear anything new, which shows that mostly they all were focused on their internal politics. And
well, we did hear about the war. President Trump said he'll end the war before he's elected.
Yeah, I heard
What do you make of that?
Першить війну навіть до виборів. Що ви скажете про це?
Я скажу чесно.
Let me be frank.
Давайте, наприклад, це вирішує.
For example, well, the decision is on U.S. public. But let me just
Yeah, but you have a stake in it.
Так, ну давайте уявимо,
Yes. So let us imagine that the winner might be Trump in November. And he knows how to end the war. He has a plan. Me, as the president of a country at war, not a theoretical person, but a real-life person, I would like to be prepared. We are 40 million. We're a big country, and we really depend on the aid from the world. And we depend on the aid and the position and the stance of the U.S. So I would like to understand, what would it mean to finish war fast? Tomorrow, do we want the war to be over tomorrow? The war didn't to start. It was Putin who started it. But I hope you agree that it would be fair. If Trump knows how to end this war, he should tell us today, because if there are risks to Ukraine's independence, if there are risks that we will lose the statehood, we want to be prepared for this. We want to understand whether in November we will have the powerful support of the US or we'll be all alone.
Do you plan to meet with Trump before the election?
If President Trump, if he is ready to discuss the topic of ending the war in Ukraine today, I am ready to meet him. This is really important for me, because the American people elects the president they want. It might be Biden, it might be Trump. I don't know. We don't know this. But if Donald Trump is elected president, then I think this would be unfair to have surprises for us later. I would like to know it in advance. It might be closed from public if there's something secret, but it's important for us to know it here, because this is our life. Only our lives are at stake here, and nobody can just trade our lives.
Has anyone from your team been in communication with anyone that's linked to the former president, Trump?
No, we have. We have communications, and even before President Biden been elected, we had communication, and I had meetings with Trump and his team. I think that a lot of people changed since those times. Yeah, we had communications, and during
when he wasn't president.
When he was the president, we had communication.
And after he was president.
No, we had now, during this process in Congress, I think that you have to understand us, we had to communicate with all of the parties, with both parties, and with all the representatives who could influence on the positive for Ukraine position of the Congress. So, of course, we had communications.
We saw the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, David Cameron, go to Mar-a-Lago. Would you consider sending someone from your team?
So I think we cannot just play some behind-the-scenes game. It would not be fair. It would not be fair for the American people, and not be fair for the current president. I think that it would be wrong. It would be correct if I meet President Trump. That would be correct. We have this serious story here. We have this war. We have the challenges. So why do we need the behind-the-scenes game? I support the direct dialogue. Some things can be open and public. Some things can be restricted. Something in between the two of us. But who are we afraid of? America is supporting Ukraine. Ukraine fights for democracy, and the United States are the leader of the democratic world. We are fighting for the values of civilized countries, and we are fighting the second largest army in the world. So everyone knows the risks. So why do we need behind the scenes?
I want to get back to President Biden, just because a fresh CBS poll says more than 70% of Americans do not think he has the mental health or cognitive health to serve. He says that he is really responsible for bringing allies together. How concerned are you about the state of affairs that openly Democrats are calling for him to not run again?
I am a person with big experience in TV. Before the politics, I worked in TV, cinema, media. Media can bring the person up or put them in place. The media can make the person active or not. Not because the person wants that, but it's a tool. Let me tell you, it's a genre. So the response to your question is very easy. And the response to the questions of those percents of the United States citizens who want to understand who is Biden now, how is he now, I think the answer is simple. He makes strong steps. If Biden shows strong steps, and I cannot push, I don't want to push, I just want to make myself clear. If President Biden shows strong, decisive steps which demonstrate strong leadership, this will be the response, I think.
Biden.
You're 46 years old. Would you do your job at 81?
Oh, wow. I don't know. It depends on many things, of course. It depends on your health and who is around you, your team, and etc. And the United States now not in war. I think being in war it's a little bit and other things. I don't know. I only can to wish good health to President Biden.
It's concerning because if the United States and Europe start to withhold aid, this will be a problem for your budget. If that does happen, how are you thinking about your budget for next year?
Withholding the budget, well, it can happen if the U.S. politics changes. If the president changes, it might change. It might change if there are other factors involved. But U.S. policies and politics, I think, still would be based on the perception of the public, on how the public thinks of Ukraine, and what they think of Putin, whether they think it can be done, whether it's permissible to do what Putin did. And this ongoing feeling that the world is tired, it also depends on the information warfare, on what the media shows. If the United States citizens, if people of the US would be holding strong to their principles, supporting Ukraine and our values, and if they would not let someone just break all the rules, the laws, values of democracy, well, then any future president of the US would not be able to change the attitude to Ukraine drastically, and they probably would not be reducing the aid. But once again, we are talking about the future, the next year. We all can show that we are strong. We all can make Russia end the war this year. We all are capable of this. When we are all together, we can demonstrate what I said. When we demonstrate that we all are strong leaders.
But in terms of your budget, there's one area where Ukraine does bring in capital, and that's Ukrainian pipelines. Europe wants to continue to see the gas flow.
Sam?
Where are the talks for the end of the year? What's the solution? Because I know you don't want Russian gas to come in.
Yes, we don't want to extend the gas contract with the Russian Federation. We don't want them making money here. This is my main signal to the government of Ukraine and to some European countries which are dependent on this gas. Because now alternative steps are considered on how we can use the pipeline with other suppliers, with a different country. There are these negotiations. If it is a normal contract, if not Russian gas would be supplied to the European countries, well, we as future members of the EU, we would have to support our friends.
Would gas from Azerbaijan, Azeri gas, be acceptable to you?
It is one of the proposals. Yes, the Azerbaijani company. But it's the government who's dealing with this now.
I want to ask you about China. The Finnish president sat down with Bloomberg yesterday and said Xi Jinping could end this war with one phone call to Vladimir Putin. What role do you want to see China play?
I would like China to play a serious role. It's a big country, and really it's the second largest economy, and Russia really depends on it, because they don't have another place to export many of their goods because of the sanctions. This shows that the president of Finland, he is right. China could play a tremendous role without weapons. Indeed, without weapons, they would be able to help us all to pressure Putin into stopping the war. That's true.
Have you seen evidence of Chinese dual-use products, whether it's lethal weapons, chips, drones, on the battlefield?
We do not have 100% evidence that Chinese weapons ends up in Russia. And the Chinese leader reassured me that he will not be doing this. Some details, some parts might be found there. Drones or spare parts for the drones, dual use, maybe. But they are not only Chinese. Let me be frank. Unfortunately, there are some European parts, and one can stop this. If there's a will of the Chinese leader to stop this, I think this would not have been happening.
We have fresh reporting overnight that actually Chinese companies and Russian companies are working together to develop an attack drone similar to the Shahadi drones that the Iranian drones. So is Xi Jinping lying to you?
Look, I cannot assess what Xi Jinping told me. I talked to him directly. He said that he will not supply weapons.
But if he does, should the U.S. and the Europeans sanction China?
If China develops jointly with Russia some weapons which will be used on the territory of Ukraine, or which will be used to support the war of Russia against Ukraine, then yes, I'm sure that it would be possible to put the sanctions, absolutely, to work on in this area.
China didn't attend your peace summit, but your chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, said that maybe the next peace summit, a representative from Russia could attend. Would you invite President Putin?
Китаю. А чи ви президента Путіна запросите туди? If the next peace summit would follow the plan we foresee, and the second summit would have the plan with all the items, the plan to end the war, how we see it, and we'll have more countries of the world. We work in this direction. If this plan is ready, we organize the second peace summit, and there the Russian representatives must be present. Who will see?
So it would be Putin?
I'm not sure. I think he is afraid to leave Russia.
But would it be acceptable for you if Vladimir Putin came to the peace summit?
Is it possible that someone else besides Putin comes?
Like who?
I don't know. Maybe by that time there'll be someone else in Kremlin. Then we'll talk to someone else.
Is there a third-party mediator that has credibility in your eyes and Russia's eyes, can begin to facilitate a conversation?
I think the United States, America, China. I think these two. I know that there are many questions between the two. I understand that. But if we want this war to end fairly for Ukraine and for the whole world, they will have to find some stance to stop Putin together in different ways, but together. Otherwise, the proposed ending to the war would not be just and fair for Ukraine. Because Russia will keep playing. Putin will see that most of the world is not on Ukraine's side, that the world is split. He is actively working to split the world, and his team is working on this. So I think the most powerful thing would be to have this joint pressure by the US and China.
You're going to be at NATO next week in Washington, D.C. President Biden recently said there will be no NATOization of Ukraine. What more do you need to do? You're at the gates. You've been asking to let in. What more needs to be done?
First and foremost, I would really like this summit to be successful for all the allies. Because at a moment like this, when there are different signals and many are irritated, the US public is now in the election process, and we don't want some aggressors in the world to abuse the situation. So we need successes. For us all, what's important is to make this summit a success. It's NATO plus, not only the NATO members. Other countries would also be present, the representatives of European countries and the Pacific. So it's important to make it a successful event. So for me, for Ukraine's security, well, this is the Patriot platform. And our team is now working actively in the US in this area. Secondly, more countries should join the guarantees of security for Ukraine. And as you said, yes, we probably would like to have to see some strong steps by the US. Honestly, we would like the invitation. And we know that we are not getting it here. But I think if we want to see the strong America, strong in the meaning which I think now is very much expected by the US public. They expect it from the US leader. We all would like to see that. I think something like an invitation would be a really strong sign. that nobody is afraid of Putin, everyone is confident in US leadership, and...
Do allies need to start thinking about the German model, allowing Ukraine in, even though it doesn't have all of its territory under its control?
Firstly, we've never received this offer officially. And as I said, I don't really like the behind-the-scenes game, because behind-the-scenes games do not end well, usually. So I can always say frankly and honestly, there are, of course, some restricted things, but mostly, to be honest, Ukraine doesn't have this opportunity. The more public Ukraine is, the more support Ukraine gets. So this model has never been offered to me. That's one thing. Secondly, I am the president and the guarantor of the constitution here. And if we talk about any changes in Ukrainian territory, it's the change to Ukraine's constitution, and it would be a crime. So if we offer the German model or the Korean model or any other, in any case, we must understand what exactly is offered, who is offering, why, and then we should understand the opinion of all of us here. It's not only me who is deciding, but the whole public, the whole society here, the people of Ukraine. We are the
I want to talk
owners of
about
Ukraine.
The state of the war now, the territory. It's entering its third summer. Russia has made some advances in Kyiv, but you've held that line. It does feel like a counteroffensive is distant, though. How long do you think we'll be in this deadlock?
It's not a deadlock. It's a problematic situation. A deadlock means there's no way out. But a problem can be solved if one has the will and has the tools for this. We do have the will, and the tools they haven't arrived yet. So we do have the brigades without weapons. We have the reserve. We have 14 brigades without all the set of equipment. They do not have all the equipment. They do not have the weapons which have already been voted and discussed. The package of weapons should arrive, and they're slow. We appreciate the Congress for their support. Yeah, but it should arrive here. We cannot just discuss some counteroffensive activities. We need to protect what we have. We want to start the counteroffensive when we are ready. And we are ready when the weapons arrive. And now it's not here.
Counteroffensive this year or next year?
It depends. It depends. It will be immediately when we will have all the equipment, which was voted in Congress and also was supported by European packages, European leaders.
What's the timeline?
I don't know. Nobody knows. It's a pity. I think this is the biggest tragedy of this war, that between the decision and real fact, we have, real long way. That's why, time to time, Russians, they understand what we will do. No secrets. They will understand our offensive or counteroffensive steps. They understand because it's too long of preparing. So many people are speaking about this. So many people know that this equipment is for South and this is for East. And then leaders, when they supported and when they decided to support Ukraine, and then after supporting, they come to officially to media and say, yes, this weapon will go to the South, exactly where guys will take this weapon and go straightly. And of course, no secrets and no surprises for Russians. That's why counteroffensive is so difficult, so long.
Do you have enough manpower for the weaponry?
It's difficult to speak about people. The soldiers always say that it's never enough. And civilians always say we think that we have huge number of people and big army, and we have to pay sellers, and it's very difficult to pay taxes and to collect such volume of money for army and etc. But for today, situation is much more better than it was during last 3 months, and so. That's why I said to you that the number one is equipment for today, military packages. They have to be here. They have to be here.
The United States has asked you to not target Russian refineries because they're concerned about higher U.S. oil prices. Do you feel that they're putting their own economic interests above your security?
That's a complicated question. I think you know the answer to this.
Well, are you acquiescing?
Let me explain my stance. We had many different dialogues. My position is very open. We have our electrical infrastructure targeted, and nobody was able to put Putin in place, so that he would not be transforming this war, or the special military operation, as he said, into the genocide of the Ukrainian people by leaving them without potable water, by leaving hospitals without electricity. This is genocidal policy. Nobody stopped Putin. Then we started targeting his energy sector so that he would understand. I don't know if he understands anything now, but we started targeting it. And then suddenly everyone started talking to us that, you should stop these steps, because that would be the escalation. I don't know. War already is the highest escalation. How can we escalate the war? Anyway, now we have this very specific situation. Our stance is simple. The world hurts when we hit Russia's energy sector, so make Russia not targeting our energy sector. This is a simple formula.
The U.S. also said there's no change in policy when it comes to ATACMS. You have a team in the United States right now. They met with Secretary Blinken, they met with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Any change in policy you think you'll see from the U.S.?
If there's no change of policies, then it makes no sense to use the ATACMS. It makes no sense to use them, because once again, when we wait a long time before striking anything, in case of Russian planes, for example, everyone has said they have these airfields, the bases, military airfields, where the planes are stationed and they fly there and they shoot their guided aerial bombs on us. Thousands of bombs. So if we do not make Russia take the planes further into Russia to the distance from which they cannot launch the guided bombs, where they can only use rockets and missiles, and the missiles are also bad, but there are much less of them than the bombs. If we don't force Russia to withdraw the planes, they will just keep destroying every living thing here. So how can we force them? We need to have weapons which would target their military airfields. If the United States are not giving us the possibility to do that, to use that weapons, then it would have no effect.
Another piece of technology that's been very useful to you has been Starlink, but there's been reports about Russia interference in Starlink. Do you trust Elon Musk?
Ви довіряєте Маску? We use Starlink. We trust Starlink. Starlink as a system has been very helpful. We've got some information that the Russians have started also using Starlinks, following our example. That's unfortunate. That's a tragedy. It does not depend on us. It's not our Starlinks. They couldn't get them from us. So they got them from somewhere else. Unfortunate. This is the modern warfare.
But do you trust Elon Musk? Because there's been a spat between you in the past.
Були якісь певні непорозуміння. In the past, I don't think we had any personal misunderstandings. I could disagree with his rhetorics. He, I think, disagrees my rhetorics. This is how it goes. But I am fighting the war, and he is there in the United States of America. If he wants to know what is happening here, he can pay a visit here. He is a well-known person, and we do appreciate for helping us with the Starlinks.
One of the things President Biden said in that Time magazine interview about you joining NATO, he said some of the issue was he spent a lot of time here as a senator, spent a lot of time here as a vice president. He said there's too much corruption. And at the moment, there's been concerns that you've been concentrating power in too few hands. Your chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, has been described to me by people on both sides of the Atlantic as not number one, but also not number two. Are you concerned that he has too much power and potentially it's a liability, which we've seen in some of the polling data in Ukraine?
If you analyze the media about Andriy Yermak, they started talking like this after they said similar things about the previous chief of staff, and then they talked like that about a parliamentarian. There was another guy. Now they talk about Yermak in this way. You must understand, this all is done to simply attack me. Russia has been launching lots of disinformation that I don't decide that there are some shadow leaders, that the president is not in control of his party, or the president does not have any influence on different ministers, and so on. I don't want to have influence. There's the law. I'm the president according to the laws of Ukraine. Yermak is a powerful manager. He is one of the very powerful managers in my team. I deeply respect him for showing the results. He does what I tell him to do, and he fulfills the tasks. And this is like that. If you want to weaken a person, you will hit his team. And when you finish the team of this person, then you will start hitting the president. This is politics, the politics of those who are not happy with me. And it's not only the Russians who are not happy with me. Yeah, the Russians, of course, will be the first who would be happy to destroy me, because for them it's one of the plans to occupy Ukraine. And they have also lobbied this in other countries of the world. But unfortunately, not only the Russians want to have a weak president of Ukraine. A weak president of Ukraine is the possibility to take half of Ukraine's territory, is the possibility to stop Ukraine halfway on entering the EU, joining the EU, is the possibility to have my mouth shut, it's the possibility to have a different person at the helm of Ukraine who would not have influence on the public. This is the task for many in the world. This is what's happening. I want to say also in general that Ukraine, which nobody discusses and which nobody hears, this type of Ukraine would be very convenient for many. Some people, might be affected because we don't develop our agriculture and export. Some would be happy that we do not show the example of how we can stop the Russian expansion and bring the Soviet Union back. Someone would be happy that we do not inspire other former Soviet Union republics. A strong Ukraine creates problems for many. A strong Ukraine is not needed for many, but strong Ukraine is fair and just. And most countries of the world need this type of Ukraine because we show an example.
There's two more questions I'd like to ask you. If you don't mind answering in English, because I couldn't quite get it earlier with the translation. When I asked you about former President Trump, you plan on meeting him to prepare for potentially if he's president of the United States?
Yeah. I said, yes. I said that I'm potentially ready to meet with President Trump. Of course, for me, it's very important. So for me, it's very important not to have any surprises, which can be very tragical, yeah, in English, tragiczny, very tragic to Ukraine. I mean, that I don't want to have any surprise. I want to understand what he means when he said or when he says or when his team, maybe it's not him, maybe some circle, his close circle. I don't know these people. I mean, that I said to you that I knew a lot of people from when he was the president. Yes, so I don't know his close persons, not too much about it.
But are there plans in the works?
They can't. I mean, they can't plan my life and life of our people and our children, etc. That's why I'm not pushing to. I'm just, my message is if they have the plan, it can be maybe not public because of the elections, but I think we have to know it before to prepare.
He also said at the debate that it was Putin's dream to do this, and he said he told me about it. Had he ever told you?
About what?
Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
No, Trump?
Trump said Putin saw what happened in Afghanistan, and then he took that moment and said, I'm going to go in, invade Ukraine. And Trump said this was his dream. He told me about it, his dream. When Trump was president, did he ever relay that information to you?
No, I think yes, it's true. I think it's true. Maybe it's not. I think it's true, yeah, that it was Putin's dream to occupy Ukraine. No, better way to occupy Ukraine like he did it with Belarus. Not to occupy the territories, but to do to have total influence on everything. Institutions, government, security service, army. What he got on Belarus. What he mostly did with Moldova. But then a lot of changes with the new president and etc. But he did a lot. And that, I think that is cheaper for him not to fight. It was cheaper, but he couldn't do it with Ukraine, with us, with Ukrainian people. That's why he began this total occupation, because his dream. Russia, just you to know, I'm sure in 100%, Russia without Ukraine is zero. Russia without Ukraine and Belarus, it's just a small country, just normal country, not ever, never empire. That's why Putin will fight to the end to have any possibility to occupy Ukraine.
Before you were wartime president, you were a comedian. What was the last joke you told?
I don't remember.
Do you still find humor in life in these dark times?
In books.
Every day you're dealt with tragedy.
Sometimes in books, sometimes in internet, a lot of different memes. Yeah, it's funny to have some time early in the morning. I read news and sometimes I see something and 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Some moments are funny, but the most funny things when I have possibility to see my children. Not funny, my daughter, she's adult. She's very serious. Yes, it's true. No, but son is very funny.
But as a comedian, even though you're in such dark times, I mean, you're dealing with funerals every day, you're dealing with tragedy on a daily basis, you can find a moment for humor.
We have to find some time, moments for such, for such mood, because if you are so we are focusing all my time on the war and on the situation in Ukraine and abroad. I have so many questions, so many questions. But of course, some moments we have some sweet moments, like I said, with children. Sometimes with the people, some jokes. It's normal, you know, like chirurgy,
Surgeon.
Yeah, like surgeon. Surgeon, it's not sergeant. Surgeons,
I thought surgeon.
Like surgeon, they operate and they have to focus. Yes, really to give people life, bring life again. But some of them, I know some guys, especially on the front, and they always joke between these operations. Yes, because they said that otherwise we will be crazy, and we have to find these moments. That's why I also find moments.
President Zelensky, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.